SoFi recently had two pieces of news that may have seemed insignificant to some investors out there, but these two pieces of news actually signal for a major catalyst for SoFi's stock price moving forward for the next year to year and a half, roughly. We're going to talk about those two pieces of news that came out recently with SoFi, and we're going to talk about that major catalyst that this sets SoFi up for in terms of stock price movement. This news comes after SoFi is up 80% year to date. They're up over 168% from the April lows in 2025, and they're up 239% in the past 12 months. I feel so bad. I was talking to my Patreon members. I feel so bad for people who gave up on SoFi when the stock was stuck at $5 or $6 or $7. There were years where SoFi was stuck at those price ranges, and instead of accumulating more shares, a lot of people gave up on the management team, gave up on the stock, and sold their shares, and now unfortunately they missed out on multiple hundreds of percent of gain. With these recent stock price moves, obviously the market cap has moved substantially as well. The market cap now with SoFi is all the way up to $29.05 billion. The major reasons that SoFi has ripped higher lately is one, continued operational excellence from the management team. Number two, a recent shift in their business model to be more of a capital light business rather than a capital heavy business. Which is leading to reason number three, profits are absolutely exploding. In the most recent quarter, they had 700% EPS growth year over year. They also had a massive beat and acceleration of revenue, up to 44% revenue growth in the most recent quarter, along with 81% adjusted EBITDA growth, and their fee-based revenue, which after that business model shift to the more capital light business model, this now represents a major portion of their revenue, up to $387 million of the total $858 million. That was up 72% year over year. Okay, so now that we know why SoFi's been flying, let's talk about the two pieces of news that a lot of investors didn't think were that big of a deal, but actually signal something much, much larger, and that is two different index inclusions. They got added to the MSCI ACWI index. That's a mouthful. That's the All Country World Index from MSCI. SoFi, Rocket Lab, and Affirm were the three companies from the US that got added to the index, and then a few weeks later, they got added to the Bloomberg 500 index. And actually 16 different companies are going to be added. They're actually going to be added in September, but this was just announced last week. And this is the start of something much bigger coming for SoFi, and that's actually two other index inclusions that are a much bigger deal. Number one, S&P 500 inclusion, okay? The minimum market cap for an S&P 500 inclusion is about $22.7 billion as of 2025. SoFi is now above that at $29 billion, okay? As long as their stock price stays above about $20 a share, they will continue to be eligible for S&P 500 inclusion. We know that they have now flipped to profits and they're growing profits like crazy. They have been profitable for the last 4 quarters in terms of their total sum, and they were profitable in their most recent quarter, with profits expected to keep on rolling in every single quarter. They're going to report GAAP profitability every single quarter. That is not going to be an issue. Liquidity is not an issue for SoFi. They meet all the criteria to be included into the S&P 500, but there's a lot of other companies that are also on that list as well, okay? So I don't think SoFi is going to get that inclusion next month or next quarter. I think that SoFi will get it over the next 4 to 6 quarters. I don't think it'll be really, really soon, but I also don't think it's a far, far reach for SoFi to get included over the next year and a half. I do think the probability is very high. And the second index they're likely to be included in, but this one's a little bit more tricky, is the NASDAQ 100. There's actually a requirement that you're not allowed to be a bank, but you can be in the financials industry, okay? Because PayPal is in the NASDAQ 100, all right? So if SoFi can be considered a fintech company rather than a bank, then it is possible for them to get the NASDAQ 100 inclusion. This one's a lot trickier. Like I said, it's totally possible that the committee says, no, you're a bank, you're not eligible for NASDAQ 100 inclusion. But when a company like PayPal's in there, definitely keeps the door open for SoFi, assuming they can be considered a fintech stock rather than just a bank stock. So the NASDAQ 100 one is a little tricky, but the S&P 500 one is not tricky at all. In my opinion, it's just a matter of time before SoFi replaces either a technology company because it's considered as a fintech, or if they replace one of the regional banks. There's many regional banks in the S&P 500. SoFi could replace one of those pretty easily. And this would create forced institutional buying, higher institutional ownership of SoFi, and it would open up this as an investment opportunity for a lot of investors. This deepens and broadens the investor base for SoFi once they get these major index inclusions. A lot of investors won't invest in companies that are outside of the S&P 500. I don't necessarily agree with that strategy, and I don't think it's going to do you very well over time, but if you're a more risk-averse investor, getting the S&P 500 inclusion is basically a bid from the S&P committee that this is a legit company with respectable profits and likely, at bare minimum, many years of stability ahead, if not many years of growth ahead. So how long until I think SoFi gets included in the S&P 500? Roughly 4 to 6 quarters. It could happen before that, but that's my base case, somewhere between a year and a year and a half from right now as I'm recording this video. What about NASDAQ 100 inclusion? That one's a lot trickier. They're going to have to convince the market that they're a fintech company, not a bank, okay? Their capital light business model pivot can help this. Them re-entering the crypto market can help this. Them getting their tech platform to have way more growth and bring in way more profit can help this, okay? But that said, PayPal, the other financials company that's in the NASDAQ 100, is not a bank, okay? SoFi is a bank. They have their national bank charter. They have their banking license. PayPal is not a national bank. PayPal does not have their banking license. So they might just say, you know what, you have your banking license, you can't get in no matter what. So we'll have to wait and see on that one, but it's definitely a lot less likely than that S&P 500 inclusion. So let me know in the comments below what you think the timeline looks like for SoFi to get added to the S&P 500 and the odds that they get added to the NASDAQ 100, even though they have their bank license. I look forward to seeing your comments in the comment section below. Thanks so much for stopping by. Have a great night.